Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you the first part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 01 I am Minato Namikaze. Third person POV. Somewhere in the training fields, Konoha, year 32. A boy with yellow hair suddenly awakens in a forest clearing. What a darn headache. He mutters as he scratches his head, trying to alleviate the pain. A few seconds pass, and he stands up, particularly disturbed, looking around, trying to figure out where he is. It seems he's even lost the knowledge of his own name. His eyes scan the area, unsure of what to do, and he ends up looking at his small hands with some wounds on them. My hands hurt a bit? And I don't remember having such tiny hands. Wait. I'm starting to remember. Is this real? Did it really happen? So, I've truly come to this fictional world. The boy, who was quite lost until now, starts jumping and shouting as things fall into place in his mind. Now I need something to see my face, and fast. He seems excited, searching for anything that could show his reflection to confirm some things. It doesn't take long for him to hear the sound of rushing water from one corner of the forest, and he immediately runs in that direction. The 6-year-old boy runs as if his life depends on it, but he's laughing and excited about what he'll see in his reflection. He sees a river with a strong current and jumps from the highest hill he can find with his child's body to reach it. As soon as he reaches the riverbank, the first thing he does is look at his reflection in the water. Even with the water flowing, he can see himself there, spiky and stylish blonde hair, blue eyes, and a big smile on his face, expressing his current joy. Despite having a child's face, his identity is unmistakable. He's one of the most significant characters in this universe, and he has earned the right to be that character. I am Namikaze Minato. Ha 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 ha. The boy laughs by himself on the riverbank. While laughing, he can't help but think that he's no longer the Minato Namikaze from Naruto's original story, but a transmigrator who has been given a new chance to live in this world. His purpose is to satisfy a bored cosmic entity called ROB, who wanted to see a new story to escape his boredom. So, he sent a new soul here to replace a key character and have fun with the changes this new arrival would bring to the world, complete with a few privileges. My cheat is simple. I have the Pika Pika no Mi without its water weakness and a one-piece world body, along with the ability to use chakra. That's really good and gives me a potential far greater than canonical Minato. He exclaims in his mind while still jumping on the riverbank. Besides having Minato's talent, I can become the world's greatest taijutsu expert with the 6 styles. I also have a body made of light and destructive abilities with the fruit. Best of all, I didn't even have to eat it and experience its horrible taste, as it's always described. There are other cool things too, like Haki, which is like Uzumaki abilities and sensors compared to observation Haki, or how Raikage would deal with their lightning chakra cloaks against an even more powerful attack and solid defense with armament Haki. The young Minato can already envision his future battles. Unfortunately, that ROB limited me to Conqueror's Haki. He just said that I couldn't end a war solely by using my aura, so he limited me to 1% of my potential with this Haki. But I can still use it to stun some people, which is still pretty good. I hope that changes in the future. The young Minato is still happy, very happy with everything, ready to show his power when the time is right in the future. I'm sure the first ninja war has already passed, but I'll still be involved in the second, third, and fourth ninja wars. They'll all fall before Minato Namikaze. And I don't plan on becoming a puppet Hokage for those old folks, or dying during the birth of my first child. He shouts happily, making promises about what won't happen to him. Although I believe the second war must be happening now. Strange, I still can't remember anything about Minato before this point. He murmurs a bit. Can I see his memories if I try to search his mind? Let's try to see what's happening in young Minato's life. He begins to focus on his memories, and they respond by giving him a headache, just like before. But his curiosity and hunger for information override the pain, and he continues to force his memories. Now he knows that Minato was an orphan in one of Konoha's orphanages, having arrived in the village 2 years ago and being in the orphanage ever since. He had friendships with all the children. This was the time when Minato used to share with his orphan friends. However, he discovered that tomorrow would be his first day at the Ninja Academy. So, he left the orphanage and came to one of the training fields near the village to train. He trained until he hurt his hands, much like they are now, with wooden kunai. It was during the next moment when his personality changed, and his powers were transferred to his altered body. This body not only possessed chakra but had superhuman potential beyond any ninja in the world, maybe second only to Jinchuriki in terms of physical potential. So, tomorrow, the academy will begin. The second Hokage ruled a few years ago, and Hiruzen is now wearing the Hokage hat. The Second World War hasn't started yet, Mito is still alive, and Kushina won't come to Konoha for a few more years. But I must get stronger by then because I have to protect her from the Cloud Village people, and maybe I can save Yuzushiogakure in the future. He thought. First, I should start my personal training. Maybe I should begin with observation haki and prepare my body with weights before starting training with the 6 styles. He thought while organizing and mentally listing his next steps. I need to master Fuinjutsu. Learning from Mito-sama is the best option, but I doubt I could ever reach her. I can't just show up at the Senju residence and say, "Hello, I'm just an ordinary orphan and I want to see the village's most powerful weapon and the person with the highest authority in the country, where even the Hokage and the daimyo of the country should be respectful in her presence." Minato thought ironically. It's not the time for me to meet her yet. For now, it's just training and buying some weight seals when I have some savings. So, I'll focus on what I can do now. Minato thought internally. Unable to do much, Minato decided to return to the place where he woke up in this world and picked up some ugly and crooked wooden kunai that the old Minato had used for training since it was the only thing an orphan could acquire. He only had 3 of them, so he gathered them all on the ground and prepared to train. Let's start with this. Tomorrow, I'll begin my real training after the academy. Minato thought as he started throwing some kunai at various forest targets. Chapter 02 Orphanage. Third-person POV. Somewhere in the training fields, Konoha, year 32. I'm exhausted, my body doesn't seem to have much endurance yet. I have a long and challenging journey ahead for more intense training. Minato said to himself, dissatisfied as he returned to the village center after his intense training. The sky had an orange hue at this moment, indicating that it was nearing the end of the day, and the sun was losing its shine to make way for the rising moon on the other side. In Konoha, nighttime activities were beginning. But not nighttime activities like gambling houses or brothels. Tobirama, the second Hokage, never wanted those in the village. However, he couldn't prohibit them either, so he pushed these establishments away from the main streets, and these types of places seemed to act as a black market within the village. This was beneficial for many ninja and civilians because their actions could be more discreet in these places without tarnishing their family or wife's reputation. As Minato walked, he couldn't help but notice something. Strange, the village looks as developed as it did in the anime. I thought it would be less developed since we're about 30 years before the TV series. Minato thought as he passed Uchiha ninja patrols, acting as the village's police force. Putting aside thoughts about Konoha's urbanization, Minato couldn't help but marvel as he saw people going about their business, traders opening their shops, families with children, civilians in plainclothes, and some leaping between rooftops silently. Others passed by like a flash so fast that Minato couldn't keep up with them using his current eyes. All of this seemed to be a pretty normal sight within Konoha. This place is so active at dusk, and it's just beginning. This world is incredible. Minato laughed internally, thinking that all of this would be part of his life. He continued walking through the village center, admiring everything and everyone, to finally leave the bustling area and enter a more modest region. But even here, there were activities in some shops and people outside their homes. Minato moved forward through the somewhat poorer area of Konoha until he reached a 2-story building, his orphanage. It wasn't very well maintained, and the building looked old, even though it was only a little over 30 years old. Yet, this orphanage could accommodate more than 30 children, and Konoha's administration financed and took care of it to ensure they could support these children. Minato sighed and went to the door. There was no one playing in the yard at this time, and the young boy with blonde hair knew what was waiting for him. Knock 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 asterisk. With his knocks on the door, he heard someone with heavy steps approaching, appearing to be in a hurry. Did you find the boy? The first thing Minato heard before a middle-aged woman, in her 40s, opened the door and exclaimed these words with a worried expression. The woman quickly looked at him and fell silent, which lasted for 10 seconds before she made sure he was alone and showed a stern face from there. Minato! Where were you? I asked some genin to look for you when you weren't among the children at curfew. Now you show up alone, so you came back on your own, but still, you better tell me where you were. She said sternly while analyzing him, all sweaty, with dirty clothes and some calluses on his hands from throwing kunai after hours of training. Minato had to shrink his shoulders a bit, knowing how severe this woman was, but she still cared for him. Madame Garit, I was training, and I lost track of time while doing so on one of the training fields. Minato said a bit reluctantly. He had to let her know. I know you ought to be Hokage and all, and you're excited to start the academy tomorrow, but you shouldn't go out like this and come back so late, boy. I'll let it slide today since you and a new batch of children will be going to the academy tomorrow, but there won't be a next time, so you better be more careful. She warned him, and Minato gave her an apologetic smile. Thank you, Madame Garit. I promise to be more careful next time, he said, and she made way for him to enter and go past her. Go to your room and get some clothes. You need to take a bath before dinner. She requested, and he nodded, heading to the orphanage's stairs since the children's rooms were upstairs. Minato climbed the stairs and entered one of the doors in the hallway. There was a shared room for the children with several beds, and it was still too early to sleep, so everyone was awake, gossiping, and playing with each other. Minato's arrival didn't go unnoticed, and many raised their eyebrows when he entered, looking disheveled. Where were you, Minato? One of them raised their voice, gaining the attention of the other 8 children. I was training in the forest, he said simply. Training? Well, you'll need it, as you'll be behind me tomorrow, one of the boys said arrogantly, wearing a mocking smile. Good luck with that. As you can see, I'm dirty, and Madame Garit asked me to take a bath before dinner, so I'm heading to the bathroom. See you later. Minato simply said, reaching his bed, grabbing his towel and some clothes, and leaving through the same door he entered, leaving the children quickly bewildered. He didn't want to pay them any attention. Minato had a much more mature mindset now, so why bother responding to a bunch of kids? He didn't even care and continued taking care of his own business. Minato quickly took a bath in the communal tub and, once clean and fresh, went to the first floor where the large communal kitchen was located. The 30 orphanage. Children were already eating at this time. They ranged in age from 4 to 14, and by 15, they had to leave the orphanage and find a job to carry on with their lives. In a world where 8-year-old children were taught to kill like emotionless machines, the age of majority was 15 for those who weren't ninja. Hey, Minato went to train in the forest, can you believe it? One of the children suddenly shouted these words to the older kids. Is it true? Do you think you'll pass the tests tomorrow? I can even show you some cool jutsu I learned at the academy if you want. One of the boys, about 3 years older, said, seemingly showing off in front of him and the other children. Minato rolled his eyes. He knew the boy was lying. In the academy, you only learned the basic techniques, which were 3 E-rank jutsu, or at least that was how it was in the anime. This boy just wanted to show off to the younger ones. Really? Big brother, please teach me. You're so cool. It seems your trick to look cool worked. Minato murmured internally but didn't care any further. He grabbed his bowl of stew to replenish the energy he had spent during his training that afternoon. Enough chit-chat. Finish your meals before bedtime. Madame Garit quickly told them to stop gossiping and focus on their food. Minato remained silent after that, not wanting to talk much, and ate in silence while savoring the stew at the end of his plate. They returned to the room afterward and went straight to bed. Minato could hear the children's chatter about going to the academy tomorrow and the younger ones complaining about having to wait 1 or more years. The blonde let his consciousness fade as he closed his eyes and quickly fell asleep, not caring about the outside world. Wake up! Let's go to the ninja academy. Wake up, let's become ninjas. Minato woke up with all that noise being made by one of the children. Stop yelling. I'm trying to sleep, someone said, but the boy in question seemed quite excited and kept shouting. The future Yellow Flash got up after that, yawning, and started preparing to return to the center of Konoha. He had never been to the academy in these 2 years, so he needed to get ready. After having a quick breakfast, Madame Gurit asked the other orphanage staff to take care of the other children who would stay behind. There were children who had already gone to the academy to study earlier since they had passed the academy's ninja test in recent years. Meanwhile, Madame Gurit would take a group of 6 children to fill out the forms and take the admission tests. This group was the only one available in this small orphanage to have a chance to enter the life of a ninja this year. I'm so excited. I'm going to be ahead of all of them. I'm going to be. Not even the big clans can beat me. You're just talking fantasies. Everyone knows that we civilians don't stand a chance against them. I refuse to be a cannon fodder like you say. I'm going to be Hokage. Minato ignored this kind of conversation and continued following the orphanage caretaker through the streets of Konoha. People looked at the group of children with some smiles, as everyone knew that today was the test day. They walked a long way since the village was quite large and finally arrived near the Hokage building and the wall with the statues of 3 men. This was where the academy set up by the second Hokage was located. This place is immense. Minato exclaimed as they arrived in front of the gates. The place really looked like a college with an area of at least 200 square meters. Well, I guess it's fair since Konoha should have between 10,000 to 20,000 active shinobi, and replenishing these ranks is extremely important after a war and performing missions with such a deadly profession and a high mortality rate, which is being a shinobi. Minato thought silently. As they entered, they saw a large crowd of people gathered, and Madame Gurit pushed them into the large crowd. There must have been about 1,000 children there, with many parents accompanying them and other groups like theirs, as Konoha had hundreds of other orphanages in the village. Chapter 03, Crowd and Gossip. Third-person POV. Madame Gurit's Orphanage, Konoha, Year 32. Minato and his group reached the crowd with Madame Gurit, blending in as more people continued to gather. Madame Gurit. They had just found a spot in the crowd to wait for further instructions, and a man dressed as a chunin approached and spoke to Madame. Hello, Erlin. How are you? She said with a polite smile. I'm fine, Madame Gurit. Some genins told me that you lost one of your kids yesterday, but he came back on his own. He said as his eyes scanned the group of kids. Yes, one of those little rascals gave us quite a scare yesterday. It was that blonde one over there, running off to train in some training field. She said with a wry smile, clearly dissatisfied with what had happened the day before. Ha ha ha. Don't be too mad at the kid, he's just excited about the prospect of entering the academy. Do you want to be a great ninja, kid? He asked Minato. Of course, I do. Minato replied with a warm smile, though not as exaggerated as the other children. He remained calm, just like the Minato from the original series, who always had an easy smile but was also calm and analytical. Then I'll be looking forward to great results from your tests, just like with the other children. He encouraged Minato, who nodded in gratitude. He truly appreciated those words. Minato began to think about how Madame Gurit had strong connections among the ninja. Not a jonin, but she knew some chunin and a handful of genin. He now realized that most of them had been raised by her, which was quite evident. The children next to Minato started shouting at the ninja who was Madame's friend, saying they would do better and come in first. Minato ignored the chaos from the other groups, as seeing 1,000 children gathered in one place was unbearable. He began to imagine what the tests would be like, knowing that they would involve kunai throwing, but it would not be something to fail the kids on, as that could be developed in the middle of the academy. Minato wasn't worried about that, even though he had to improve his accuracy over the rest of the year. There should be 2 more tests, one physical, which had to be done on a circuit, and another, the last test, which Minato believed to be the main one. The one to test the children's chakra affinity, of course. Konoha will want to nurture children who have an easier time molding their chakra. Minato thought while the crowd continued to grow. He was lost in his own thoughts when he felt a certain commotion coming from his surroundings. "Look, it's Princess Senju!" Someone yelled as if they had seen the Hokage himself. Curious about this title, which he only remembered from his few years in the village, belonging to someone named Senju Tsunade, Minato quickly looked to that side, wondering why Tsunade would appear here. The boy noticed how the crowd was parting to make way for a trio that entered, as they opened a path through the crowd. This demonstrated that the people had great respect for this little group. Minato was amazed by this sight. There were 3 people in the group, but it was something he never expected to see here, especially the other 2 people beside the first Hokage's granddaughter. Tsunade-sama brought her daughter to the academy. "I hope my son can study with her." A woman near Minato, presumably someone's mother, quickly shouted. Yes, Minato was amazed that Tsunade had a daughter and that she was walking in front of her mother and father. Tsunade had a daughter with Dan? This is very unexpected, especially since I thought she would be around 18 years old now, but it seems she is a few years older than I thought, maybe around 25. Minato reasoned, looking at Tsunade in her prime and accompanied by her husband. But seeing the girl walk in front of her parents like this, she seems as arrogant as her mother was in those flashbacks from the anime. Minato murmured, thinking that Tsuna, despite looking cheerful and smiling, walked with an air of arrogance among the crowd, her nose held high. He concluded that he should avoid getting on her bad side. He didn't realize he was caught up in his own thoughts, and he didn't see the shadow blocking the morning sun in front of him. More precisely, 3 shadows were in front of him. "Hey, kid. I heard you say some strange things. I have to ask you, who are you talking about, and are you saying it's as arrogant as her own mother?" He heard someone with an annoying voice in front of him. Minato quickly raised his head, snapping out of his thoughts, and realized that the trio that had attracted attention until a while ago was now standing in front of him. Minato seemed to have gotten in their way without realizing it, as everyone else moved aside to let them pass. The family had stopped for the first time, and a boy had been standing in their way, and he had heard what Minato had said. The women in that group looked at him with fierce eyes. Minato was taken aback by this. The young blonde girl, very similar to her mother, glared at him with deep annoyance. "Tell me, I hope you're not referring to us?" she asked again, annoyed. "Kid, you'd better not be talking about us." Tsunade, the woman behind the girl, spoke with arrogance, crossing her arms as well. Mother and daughter looked so alike that even Minato was surprised. The entire crowd had their eyes on them now. They had been watching the trio since their arrival, but now the little orphan who had apparently irritated the women in the group was also receiving everyone's attention, some with sympathy, and others thinking they were watching an entertaining show. "Can we keep going? I'm sure the kid wasn't talking about us." Dan, the white-haired man, tried to calm the situation. He saw the boy in a difficult situation and knew it was better than making enemies of the women in his life, with all the experience he had dealing with that at home. "Dan, you're too soft on kids. Let's just leave this stinky brat this time. I want to see that old man when he shows up," Tsunade said, still with her arms crossed, and she pushed Tsuna to keep walking. Minato quickly moved aside to get out of their way in this commotion. "I hope we can meet again, kid," Tsuna said before continuing her way, leaving Minato somewhat confused about the kind of trouble he had gotten into without even entering the academy yet. What kind of person is this girl, and what have I gotten into with just a few thoughts spoken aloud? He still couldn't believe the situation he found himself in, but it was clear that the girl was vengeful, and Minato knew they would encounter each other many times in the years to come. "Minato, you're so brave. I wonder why the Senju princesses look so irritated with you," one of his orphanage peers teased him. Otto, show some more respect for people." Madame Garit quickly scolded him, showing her displeasure with the boy. I'm sorry, madam. It wasn't my intention." That was all Minato managed to say, a bit lost. Minato was now thinking about how to get out of this situation, but another group seemed to arrive, pushing everyone aside as they made their way through, even more so than the previous group. "Look, it's the Uchihas!" someone shouted from the other side of the gathered crowd. Minato looked once again to the entrance of the academy and saw a group of people with stern, almost expressionless faces, leading some children in front of them. They look like some kind of mafia, they're all so proud. Minato thought as he noticed they made a point of displaying their emblem on their clothes, the fan with flames. Minato spotted a young girl among them, her hair unique. With a ribbon tied above her head, similar to the young Sakura's, she had her hair tied in the back, with 2 strands falling in front of her, giving her a unique hairstyle. That girl is Makoto Uchiha, the eldest daughter of the clan leader. It's a shame that the Uchihas are so closed off, so you'd better not get close to her or any of them to avoid trouble, understand? A father seemed to be advising and warning his son next to Minato. The mother of Itachi and Sasuke? She's certainly very traditional, but even so, she's so different from what I imagined. It seems she will study with me, which is not strange, as Kushina and Makoto were friends in the original work. Minato reasoned. He was alone, lost in thought, listening to the gossip from the adults, which turned out to be quite reliable here. But that didn't last long, as a while later, whether it was the other children or the adult ninjas and civilians, everyone stopped talking because on a stage in front of the huge crowd of thousands of people, a middle-aged man entered with a red hat on his head. The Hokage himself had arrived. Chapter 04 Academy Tests. Third-person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. Today we will begin a new phase for the Leaf. What I see when I see all these children is our future, the future of Konoha, with the will of fire. I see the success of our village with these new leaves and sprouts. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the third Hokage, spoke easily for all present to hear him. He made a 20-minute speech, emphasizing the importance of Konoha and the will of fire. Minato heard that, but his eyes were rolled. He knew it was just a way to introduce an ideology that everyone must sacrifice for the village and obey their superiors like killing machines without questioning orders. He didn't want that, and he didn't like how the village and the Hokage manipulated children with these words. "I promise to change this when I become Hokage," he said to himself. Looking around, he saw how the children had shining eyes, while the adults seemed to agree with all these words. The Hokage looked at the crowd with satisfaction. The situation among the nations is becoming critical, and a new war may break out in the coming years. A new batch of ninjas must be nurtured before, hoping to pick good sprouts here. He saw the boys looking at him with eyes shining with adoration for the most part, except for a few. Many of the prominent clans didn't have that look. Tsunade and her daughter particularly just rolled their eyes. The Uchihas had expressionless and scowling looks, while the Naras just looked at him with boredom. But Hiruzen couldn't do anything about it. There were many people gathered, while the Hokage surveyed the place with a sense of accomplishment. He didn't know that among the civilians, there was a certain blonde boy looking at him with eyes different from the others, and it would intrigue the Hokage if he had noticed, as it is expected from clans but not from a civilian. Anyway, after the motivational and manipulative speech, he stepped down from the stage, leaving the academy chunins to take over the organization of the tests among the crowd, handing out forms for the guardians to fill out with the children's data before conducting the tests. Madame Gurit took a stack of them with her fellow ninjas and began filling them out for the children. This took many hours. Once all the papers were handed in and the final hour closed, dozens of ninjas took a group of children to lead them to the largest testing field, dividing them into their groups. Minato was among the boys from the orphanage, being led by one of the examiners to the first test, which turned out to be kunai throwing. When his turn came after a short wait, he picked up the iron kunai for the first time in his life. He felt the weight significantly different from the wooden ones he trained with yesterday and began throwing them at the designated targets after getting a little familiar with the weapon. He didn't achieve a great result with a score of 40% on the targets, but he didn't find his result as bad as he expected. Minato got more points than me. One of the children, the one who claimed to be ahead of everyone, only scored 30% of the targets, feeling quite dejected. "I think this test is not as important as you think. I believe you should focus on the upcoming tests," Minato advised him calmly. "Yeah, I think you're right. Thank you, Minato, he said. The next test was as Minato predicted, a circuit to assess the children's physical conditions. With the same group as the previous test, they started running together. Most children thought it was a race to see who could finish first, so chaos ensued at the starting line. The children burned all their energy to stay ahead. Meanwhile, Minato ran rhythmically to conserve his physical energy. He was naturally stronger than the others with his otherworldly body, so he ended up finishing first after passing the exhausted children on the way. Even though it wasn't his initial intention, as he thought the result wasn't very important. Kid, good physical fitness, I'm impressed. The Chunin said, jotting down the results on his clipboard after seeing Minato arrive first, surprising the examinee who didn't seem very tired. Yesterday's training was much worse than a simple obstacle course where the children had to jump and crouch as they went through the test, Minato thought. He didn't start the circuit in the first place, but the children in front quickly tired, and he passed them while maintaining his own effortless pace. The orphanage children wanted to talk to him after that, but he ignored them and continued to the next test. What can I say to them? They'll keep screaming that it's unfair for me to be better than them and stuff. I'm not in the mood to answer stupid questions, he thought as he walked to the next test. Now there was another Chunin in front of them, and they formed a large line in front of him. The test was designed for each to be tested with the release of chakra in their bodies and the affinities that the children possess, something that surprised Minato to hear since, in the original work, the Ninja Academy didn't seem to care about that. It was quite strange from his other life, elemental affinities should be something important. He wasn't the first in line, so he had to wait his turn as they walked to the Chunin who placed a chakra finger on the child's chest to release it, and then the child had to place their newly released energy on a special paper next to it. All children so far had a single affinity, ranging from fire, water, earth. Rarely did someone have a lightning affinity, and none had wind, the rarest of elements. After waiting for dozens of minutes in line, Minato was called for his turn. He walked up to the ninja, who did it calmly and let him put his finger on Minato's chest to pull his chakra. Minato felt the energy overflow his body in the next moment effortlessly. This is incredible, it's so warm and comforting. Is this my spiritual energy they call chakra? Minato said internally, feeling all that energy. Kid, that's astounding. I've never seen a child pull their chakra so effortlessly, and you have so much of it at such a young age. The Chunin couldn't help but comment with a lot of surprise. Minato had an amount that could be compared to a newly graduated genin. He might not be the child with the most chakra, as there was a senju among them, but he certainly shocked that ninja with this civilian orphan. Well, I'll fill in your data here. Try channeling the energy you just felt onto this small paper here. They're called chakra conducting sheets, he instructed, and Minato nodded. Taking the seemingly ordinary paper on the table, Minato internally focused on the energy he felt before and tried to put it on the paper between his fingers. In the next moment, the paper emitted a small blue light and went out, undergoing some changes in the next moment. The paper split into 3 aspects. One of them made a cut on one side of the paper, another burned, and in the last part, small electric currents appeared. What? 3 elements. The man, who was already surprised by his chakra, was even more shocked by this. He never expected 3 elements from the boy, considering most had only 1 element, with the exception of some clans that had 2 elements among their members. Witnessing a common orphan boy with 3 different elements left him stunned, drawing everyone's attention around him. Is that true, Greg? Does the boy have an affinity for 3 elemental affinities? Another Chunin approached after hearing this and asked the instructor leading that group of children at the moment. Yes, fire, lightning, and the rare wind are in this child. He also has chakra reserves much higher than the other children. I would say he has more chakra than all the children this year, he said. I doubt the chakra reserves will be greater than the daughter of Princess Senju, but still, 3 elements and a higher amount of chakra are enough to put him in Class A. How were the other tests with this boy? He asked, and the current examiner looked at the papers in front of him and said. Kunai throwing is well below a satisfactory result, but he certainly hasn't received training before, so it's not a surprise. But the physical test already shows great potential, as he came in first without any problem or exhaustion like the other children, he said. Minato was getting a bit uncomfortable. They seemed to be talking about him like a rare species at an auction. It bothered him a lot, but there wasn't much he could do. Stamp your resume as a recommendation for the prodigy class. I'll talk to the organizers later, said the man, and he walked away, not forgetting to congratulate Minato. Minato thanked him, despite his annoyance. He thought the chakra paper from the test was common. If it were more special, they could see his high affinity with the yang element too, which is even rarer than the wind element. Speaking of this element, I've never tested my fruit, and I don't even know how to activate it yet. I should go back to the forest and start training when things are finished here, Minato reasoned. Chapter 05 Classification. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. 3 Chunin have come to talk to me in the last 10 minutes. Tell me, what did you do, boy? Madame Garite spoke sternly when she saw Minato arrive with the other children in that group. To be honest, I didn't do anything. Minato said, scratching his head, but he was a bit calm. It was true, he just took the tests. Many examiners were questioning me, especially about your origins and personality, she said, crossing her arms. Minato was about to respond, but he was interrupted by his classmates. Aunt Garite, they said Minato has 3 elements. Is that so amazing? One of the girls, who was with Minato and his group during the tests and also part of the orphanage, asked curiously, as in the commotion between the 2 examiners, they had mentioned it out loud. 3 elements? I'm not deeply knowledgeable about ninja ways, but 3 elements are quite rare, so it's understandable that they want to know about you, she said, a little stunned, but she quickly composed herself. Is that really so good? One of the boys grumbled with a bit of envy in his voice. She looked at the children inside, then began to explain. Yes, with this, they can measure Minato's potential. Look at our Hokage, he has an affinity for earth and fire, although I heard he can use all the other elements as well, she said, crossing her arms and with a certain approval in her gaze. She wanted to see all the children with a guaranteed future, and Minato seems to be doing well in that regard. WHAAT, the children exclaimed. Now enough talking, let's go back. It's past lunchtime, and the results will only come out at the end of the day. I'll come by myself and give you the news before dinner. You are free to return to the orphanage and have your proper meals after that, she said. Really? I thought we had to stay, Minato asked curiously. No, this time will be used for them to classify the results and divide them among this year's classes, she explained, and Minato understood. All the boys returned after that. Meanwhile, in the administration, a group of Chunin and a special Jonin were approving who would go for the 30 spots in the prodigy class, the group of children they would invest the most in this year and the following years. They had to review who would be classified before passing it on to the Hokage. The village leader may not be able to take care of 1,000 children, but 30 prodigies would be meticulously passed by his eyes in this report, so they would review all the results and pay the most satisfactory among the top qualifiers. They classified the grades as follows: bad, considerably worse, average, considerably better, superior/perfect. Name, result, and classification. Makoto Uchiha. Kunai test, superior, physical classification, superior, chakra affinity and chakra reserve, considerably better, fire affinity. Classification, prodigy class. Okay, approved. This passes without surprise, being an Uchiha. It's the 3rd one we've approved in this class. Yes. Next. Name, result, and classification. Shikaku Nara. Kunai test, average, physical classification, average, chakra affinity and chakra reserve, considerably, average, affinity for fire and earth. OBS, very lazy but extremely intelligent. Classification, prodigy class. What could we expect from a Nara? Update your data with the Een, darkness, element as well, a specialty of your clan. He is approved. Yes. Next. Suna Senju. Kunai test, considerably better, physical classification, superior, chakra affinity and chakra reserve, superior, affinity for water and earth. Classification, prodigy class. Approved, there's nothing to say about the great-granddaughter of the first Hokage. Yes. Next. Minato Namikaze. Kunai test, considerably worse, physical classification, superior, chakra affinity and chakra reserve, superior, affinity for fire, lightning, and wind. Classification, prodigy class. Say the name again. Minato Namikaze. Is there any clan with the name Namikaze in the village? No, sir. Who is the boy then? Sir, I classified him. He is an orphan from one of the orphanages in the lower regions of Konoha. An orphan? That's very unexpected. Any other information? We asked the caretaker about the boy and his history. He came to Konoha 2 years ago as an orphan at the age of 4. It seems his family was destroyed in the First War, some members survived, and it appears this boy is the last of them. I see. Conduct a search on the Namikaze surname and record everything you find for the Hokage to know about the boy. He will want all the information on why the boy has such potential. Yes, sir. It looks like this year will be a good batch, huh? Yes, if we can get someone like the third Hokage's disciples or our current rising prodigy, Tsukumo Hatake, our village will be blessed. True, now, next. While they were classifying the prodigy class, Minato was running through the village at this moment. He was heading back to the same training ground he was at yesterday. He just ate and escaped from the orphanage and the kids with many questions since it was quite obvious that he was classified as one of the top results among the new batch this year. Minato didn't want to waste time on this and went to train immediately. He had a lot to learn still. Arriving at the location, Minato sighed and made sure he was alone without anyone else passing by or training nearby. Let's first try to release my Logia energy. He thought, raising his hand and attempting to make it turn into light, then squinting his eyes and focusing on it. 10 minutes later. No result. I can't even feel the energy, and I can't touch myself to prove if I'm really a devil fruit user. But I know my body is much more powerful than my peers. Maybe I only lose to that Senju girl. Minato knew that no one started strong in the world of One Piece, but the potential was always immense for everyone in that world, only that 99% of the population didn't know how to harness it. Even so, compared to the ninjas, especially children who couldn't use chakra to strengthen their bodies, Minato had a significant natural advantage. Nothing with my Logia, maybe I should train something else. He thought, frustrated. So, as Minato had a brilliant idea to start his observation haki yesterday, he brought a blindfold, tying it around his eyes. He planned to run to try to activate his observation haki while dodging trees in the forest. Let's get started, he said and began to run. Thought asterisk. Ouch. That hurt. Minato grumbled. He took 5 steps and hit a tree. I can't even have my light body to avoid damage. I'm completely screwed here. He grumbled. But it doesn't matter, let's do it here. I have many years to develop still, and I want to start with observation haki, so this pain is necessary. I'll continue until I learn. The boy muttered to himself in the middle of the forest while trying to ease the pain in his forehead after hitting that tree. Minato stood up, and even with his eyes blindfolded, he still showed determination and began to run again. Thought asterisk. Darn. That hurts too much. Chapter 06, First Day in Ninja Academy 01. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. The afternoon was nearing its end when a large crowd of parents invaded the academy once again. There were at least 10 boards with the approval of 30% of the children who took the test to enter the shinobi life. Among these 10 boards, there was one specific board that was the main focus, but it was largely ignored by civilians since it was for the top 30 children. This board was visited only by clan members and some ninjas who wanted to find out how their children performed. Mom! Look, I'm in the main class. A blonde girl shouted to her mother with crossed arms. I see, congratulations, Suna. Mother and daughter looked at the board of those approved in the academy along with the crowd as soon as the results were released. Tsunade's daughter was quite anxious and wanted to see the results quickly. In the main board, where there was the class of prodigies, many names of children from clans appeared. The mother-daughter duo easily recognized most of them, thanks to their last names. It was no surprise that all kinds of clans appeared in this class, especially some listed as heirs. "Tsunade, you're here too." Tsunade heard a familiar voice and turned to its source. "Jiraiya? What are you doing here?" Tsunade looked at her teammate with narrowed eyes, wondering why a character like Jiraiya would appear on the academy's result board, although she already had an idea of why. "I'm checking a name," he said, waving and greeting both Tsunade and little Tsuna. "Are you still looking for the perfect student? As you always say?" she asked. "That's right, I heard about someone mysterious in the prodigy class this year," he said excitedly. "Someone mysterious? Who could that be?" she asked curiously. "Let me see here. Here. Minato Namikaze. Found the kid," said a young Jiraiya with the hope of fulfilling a certain prophecy. He always looked at the new buds of the village after receiving the prophecy from the old toad, so he had some contacts within the academy to know when someone extraordinary would appear. Minato Namikaze, never heard of. This time, it was little Tsuna who said. "It's no surprise, little Tsuna. This boy came out of nowhere. He's from an orphanage, but his chakra is incredibly dense, and he has 3 elemental affinities." Jiraiya said with some excitement, maybe he finally found the disciple of his prophecy. "That is truly remarkable," admitted Tsunade. "Well, anyway, it was great to see you again, Tsunade. See you later. I'll just keep an eye on the boy in the coming years and pick him up for myself when he graduates." Jiraiya started to leave after that. "No matter who that boy is, I will be in first place," said a determined Tsuna. "I'm sure you will, Tsuna," said Tsunade. What these mother-daughter did not know is that they had already met as a boy on this same day and exchanged some words, but they had no idea that the name of that little rascal is the same as the one who performed excellently, even catching Jiraiya's interest. Meanwhile, on the other side of the village, a limping boy walked toward the center of the village from the training area to return to the orphanage. "Hey, look at that boy. For the deceased Hokages, did someone attack this child? Who does something like this? Where are the Uchiha police?" In front of them, Minato walked through the village looking very disheveled and injured. "Damn, this got way out of hand. I must have dislocated some bones and lost a baby tooth." Minato was frustrated. His first training with observation hockey was a disaster. He couldn't do anything but bump his head into every obstacle or stumble over low objects. His clothes were in tatters, his face battered, especially the forehead with some dried blood, his arms seemed to hang on his shoulder. The boy literally looked like he had gone through a violent beating. Minato wouldn't be late for curfew like yesterday, but Madame Garit would certainly scold him for his current state. The boy limped, ignoring all the stares he was getting, and continued walking to the orphanage without caring if someone asked what happened to him. "Tell me, who did this to you?" Madame shouted at him as soon as he arrived and saw his current condition. "I'm fine, it was just training," he said. "Training? You call this training, or you don't want to tell me who beat you up?" she said sternly. "It was training. I tried running through the forest blindfolded, this was the result," he said simply. "Why did you train like that? Anyway, sometimes I don't understand you, kid. Anyway, I must congratulate you. I went to the academy again and saw that you entered the main class this year. Keep working hard, kid. Now clean up, and let's put some ointment on those wounds," she said with a tone between pride and severity. "That's great. Aha, thank you." Minato smiled with some missing teeth and entered the orphanage. "Anyway, make a bright future," she said. "You got it," Minato said and went to his room to get clothes for a shower and change out of the worn-out clothes. The children questioned him all night, but Minato simply replied that he didn't know most of the things they asked about his performance on today's test. And he really didn't know. The only things that had an influence were the supposed devil fruit in his body, but chakra and affinity were natural from the original. The next day, he woke up excited. Finally, he would go to the academy with 3 other children who passed the test. Some didn't make it, remaining stuck in civilian life. But it wasn't like their lives ceased to exist there. They would have some classes in the coming years without becoming a shinobi. After breakfast, Minato left with them and their papers to be presented to the academy. When they arrived, they separated as instructed to their respective classes. Minato went to Class A, the main class of that year. "Who are you?" A chunin was in front of the door, taking the papers and preventing any child from entering the wrong room. "Minato Namikaze, here, these papers indicate this room." The blonde handed the paper to the adult. "Let me see. You're correct. Well, you can enter. Welcome to Class A. Go in and find a seat. I'll introduce myself as your teacher once everyone is inside," he said, and Minato nodded. He then entered for the first time. The place was almost full, but he could already see many people he knew from the future of the work here. Chapter 07, First Day in Ninja Academy 02. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. Minato entered the classroom calmly. The place was almost entirely filled, as the children seemed quite excited about their first day at the Ninja Academy. The room resembled the one from the anime with not much difference, 3 rows with 4 tables arranged diagonally, with the back row higher and descending to the teacher's floor. Each row accommodated 12 students, with 3 students at each table, making a total of 36 spaces for the children to sit. Initially, Minato didn't know anyone, as everyone was a child for him to try to recognize someone, while the other parts seemed to be getting along quite easily. They already knew each other, as all the clans had bonds with each other. Many children knew each other before entering the academy, thanks to meetings and parties organized by their parents. Some seemed lazy but chatted, others were arrogant, nodding as they listened to their classmates. Some looked at Minato with curiosity, trying to figure out if they knew him, but seeing that Minato didn't wear sophisticated clothes like the others, it was obvious that he didn't belong to Konoha's clans, earning him disdainful glances from many. But the boy didn't care about that. He didn't care about being approved by others as their future child. So, he calmly walked to one of the emptier tables at the back and intended to sit there. He didn't even notice a little girl looking at him like a hawk at this time from the first rows. She quickly got up and followed Minato from behind. "Suna? Why is she going after that stranger?" someone asked. "Do you know who he is?" "I don't know him." "That's no surprise. Look at his clothes, he's a civilian and a poor one at that," someone said disdainfully. "So why is Princess Senju following him?" "Who knows, maybe he'll get a beating. I heard her mom used to beat all the boys back in school." "Ha ha ha. I feel sorry for the newbie then." Minato sat calmly before feeling a shadow over him, quickly realizing it was Tsunade's daughter, looking at him with crossed arms and a small smile without taking her eyes off him. "HM? You? Can I help you?" Minato said a bit cautiously, seeing that the other part was right behind him without him noticing. "Yes, you're the boy from yesterday. I said we'd see each other again." She seemed excited, but Minato had a cautious and nervous look about it. "I don't want to get involved with a character like her, definitely not." Minato protested internally. "About yesterday, it was a misunderstanding," he said with an apologetic tone. "I see, but I'll sit here, maybe we can be friends," she said excitedly, but for Minato, she somehow wanted to beat him up for yesterday, and he knew this little girl was a kind of vengeful girl. "Okay, let's act normally, she'll leave at some point." Minato adjusted his seat, looking ahead, making Tsuna look at him with a twisted look. "You should at least introduce yourself," she protested, because the boy is ignoring her at the moment, and many are watching the interaction between the two. "Ah yes, my N." He was going to say out of politeness, but he was interrupted by the teacher's voice. "Children, everyone has finally arrived. It's time to start our introductions and begin the lesson right away," the teacher announced as the last students passed by him. A Uchiha girl, being one of the last students, went to the last vacant spot, where Minato and Suna were sitting at the moment. Suna had to sit urgently next to Minato since her old place in the front rows was filled by another child, while Makoto sat stoically on the other side. Wow, a Senju and an Uchiha on each of my sides? This is surprisingly bizarre. Minato couldn't help but think about this situation in a rather strange way. Now that everyone is in their seats, let's begin with our introduction. My name is Maki Fuma. I enjoy reading in my free time and spending time with my family. I dislike people who don't endure with their full potential. I am a chunin specialized in ninjutsu, and my big goal is to make you shine in the coming years. I will be your teacher this year, and if all goes well, in the following years as well. All of you here today were chosen to be in the best class this year, and Konoha expects good results from you, as do I. I will try to guide you in the best way possible. He concluded and continued speaking when he saw everyone paying attention to him. Now, on to your introductions. I want your name, likes and dislikes, finishing with your dreams or goals right after. He said, and the first children at the front began to introduce themselves. Minato didn't know any of them, so the introductions reached the middle of the class, making Minato raise his eyebrow at the first one to introduce themselves there. Shikaku Nara, I like to rest and sleep and don't like being awake or having too much work. I don't have much ambition, I want to have a wife with 1 or 2 children and live an average life. He said, yawning. Shikamaru's father is quite a character in his youth, at least he will be quite competent in the future. Minato couldn't help but think. Well, that's kind of surprising, I guess. Next. The teacher replied, a bit taken aback by the sleepy child's honesty. Next to him, a blond boy introduced himself. Inoichi Yamanaka, I like to learn, and I don't like doing nothing. My goal is to master my clan's techniques and make its name great in the future. Very good. Next. Choza Akimichi, I like to eat barbecue and don't like going hungry. My goal is to open a great barbecue place so I won't go hungry. He announced. The Inoshikacho trio from the future is in this room, that's surprising. Minato thought. Another odd one. Next. My name is Ibiki Marino, I like instant food, and I don't like being bored. My goal is to become a competent jonin. The boy spoke, and Minato looked at him, also surprised. This is Ibiki. How does he have so much hair? And to think he will become a torturer in the future. Minato thought. Next. Hayashi Hyuga, I like to follow rules and control situations. I dislike rebellious and weak people. My goal is to lead my clan one day. He spoke proudly. Next. Hizashi Hyuga, I like and dislike the same things as my brother. My goal is to serve my clan in the best way possible. He said, and Minato was surprised to find these brothers here. I'm Guren Uchiha, I like to become strong and dislike weak people. My goal is to make the Uchiha name proud, he said with a huffing tone. Yes, next. I'm Ake Uchiha, I like my fire style jutsus and dislike being weak. My goal is to bring pride to my family. He had a neutral expression like the last. Fire style jutsus? That's surprising for a child. Next. These Uchihas are really proud. Minato couldn't help but murmur as he looked at the presentation of the 2 Uchihas in the class. This was the clan with the most members here, with a total of 4 members. The children continued with the presentations and finally reached Minato's table, starting with Tsuna next to Minato. My name is Tsuna Senju. I like the time I spend with my family and dislike lazy people. My goal is to be a powerful kunoichi like my mother and even surpass her in the future. She said proudly. Very well, Princess Senju, next. My name is Makoto Uchiha, I like being strong and dislike people taking care of my life. My goal is to become a powerful kunoichi so that I have control over my own life. Great, a worthy goal. Next. My name is Minato Namikaze. I like to train and become strong, dislike wasting time, and arrogant people. My goal is to be the strongest ninja in the village and become Hokage. He announced. Ha 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 ha. Some laughed at the civilian's goal, as no one believed in Minato. The two girls looked at him with mixed feelings. Makoto glanced at Minato, who didn't seem bothered by the mocking attention and appeared firm in his goals, while Tsuna didn't care about his dreams, but his name came to mind in yesterday's conversation with Uncle Jiraiya. "Are you Minato Namikaze?" Tsuna shouted beside him when she realized. "Yes." Minato seemed cautious. "Children and Tsuna, don't disrupt the class," the teacher immediately warned. "Yes, yes." The children stopped laughing, and Tsuna said a little embarrassed and fell silent while looking at Minato strangely. "Anyway, I expect great things from all of you. Now let's continue with the lesson." Chapter 08, First Day in Ninja Academy 03. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. As the class proceeded, Minato tried to concentrate on the lessons, ignoring the glances and whispers of his classmates around him. He knew it would be difficult to be accepted as a civilian among so many aspiring ninjas from renowned clans, but he was determined to ignore this initial reaction and prove his own worth over time, as he is the protagonist of this story. Let's start our lesson with the history of Konoha and the will of fire passed on by the first Hokage. Professor Fuma began. Minato had to look up. While most of the children seemed excited about this, he knew this was the beginning of the brainwashing they did to children, yet Minato put on a neutral face and began to listen to the professor start to tell the Hokage chosen version of Konoha's creation. "This isn't right." Minato heard a voice beside him and found Makoto Uchiha murmuring as she listened to the professor. "Well, at least they didn't remove the Uchiha clan from the founding clans," Minato commented, and Makoto looked at him in surprise. "Do you know the real history of the founding of Konoha?" She raised an eyebrow at Minato. "It's not like I was really there, but I know a lot of the history. For example, Uchiha Madara was the one who named Konoha in a room with Mito Uzumaki, Hashirama Senju, and Tobarama Senju." Minato whispered to her. "Really?" she asked in surprise and looked at Minato with some astonishment still. "Yes, the creation of Konoha was mainly a union between the Senju and Uchiha clans, not like the professor is saying over there. He's including other clans like Sarutobi just to invent some privilege with the Hokage. And this stuff about the third Hokage being the strongest is nonsense. Even Tobarama can beat him easily," Minato whispered. Makoto began to laugh softly at this. "Hey, can you stop gossiping during class? Pay attention." Next to Minato, Tsuna seemed dissatisfied hearing the whispers of Minato and the other Uchiha girl. "Tsuna, don't disrupt the class," the teacher shouted with Tsuna's little outburst. "Sorry," she had to admit and turned her face to Minato. "See what you did?" she said dissatisfied. "I didn't cause you to yell beside me. You have to be discreet. You'll be a ninja, remember that." Minato spoke, scratching his head. But Tsuna had veins on her forehead, thinking she would hit this blue-eyed boy at the first opportunity. Now that we've talked about the will of fire, let's move on to our first practical lesson. I want to know how many of you have not released chakra before coming to take the test. The teacher asked, and only Minato raised his hand, since he was the only one who hadn't trained his chakra for not being in any clan. This earned some laughs and mockery from his classmates, but Minato didn't care. He wouldn't lie about it. As the laughter and mockery continued, Professor Fuma looked directly at Minato, his eyes sharp, but not devoid of a certain understanding. "Well, you shouldn't laugh at your classmate. Although he is a civilian, he has more chakra for his age than most of you, only losing to Tsuna Senju in this class." This immediately silenced all his classmates. The teacher turned his attention to Minato. "Minato, it's important to be honest about your abilities. That's the first step to overcoming them," he said with a tone of approval, and Minato nodded. The teacher then turned to the rest of the class again, changing the subject. "Today, we'll do chakra concentration exercises. I'll form pairs, and each of you will try to keep a leaf on your forehead using only chakra. This will not only help with chakra control but also concentration and focus." A buzz of excitement passed through the room as the children prepared for the challenge. The teacher began calling names, forming pairs. Minato was paired with Tsuna, the girl who had been annoyed with him earlier. She looked at him with a frustrated expression, but there was a spark of determination in her eyes. Don't think I'll go easy just because you're a civilian, she whispered to him. Minato just smiled, his calm and confident expression contrasting with Tsuna's fierce determination. I wouldn't expect any less from a ninja in training, he said, acknowledging her strength and seriousness. Sitting opposite each other, the air was charged with focused tension. A thin leaf rested on each of their foreheads, fluttering gently with every movement. Professor Fuma, with a serene and authoritative voice, instructed, focus on your chakra. Imagine it as a stream of energy flowing from the center of your being to your forehead, holding the leaf in place. Minato closed his eyes, trying to follow the instructions. Internally, he sought the calm and focus needed, but the chakra within him seemed like a wild animal, restless and untamable. The leaf, like a boat on a stormy sea, repeatedly fell from his forehead. He could feel the frustration bubbling within him, but refused to let it show. On the other side, Tsuna, with her eyes firmly closed, displayed intense concentration. She seemed naturally more skilled, yet still, the leaf on her forehead danced dangerously. Noting Minato's struggle, she murmured, surprisingly offering guidance, you need to relax more, Minato. Don't force the chakra, guide it as if you were conducting a gentle melody. Grateful for the unexpected advice, Minato nodded slightly. He took a deep breath, trying to dissipate the tension in his muscles and mind. Visualizing his chakra as a calm river, he tried again. This time, when he opened his eyes, the leaf trembled but remained in place, sustained by a more stable and controlled flow of chakra. Around, the room was divided between those who laughed with each fallen leaf and those who, like Makoto, held the leaf firmly in place, demonstrating the skill of future ninjas. She cast an approving glance at Minato, acknowledging his progress. Great work, Professor Fuma praised, walking among the pairs. Chakra control is fundamental for a ninja. Today is just the beginning. With practice and patience, you will become masters of it, and it will reflect in your skills. Tsuna, with an eyebrow raised, asked Minato, you're good, haven't you done this exercise before? Minato shook his head, a humble smile on his lips. No, I've never released my chakra before coming here to take the tests. It's the first time I'm trying, but it's still very difficult. He admitted, his voice carrying a mix of frustration and determination. They continued, each attempt bringing them closer to mastery, one step at a time on their journey to become capable and controlled ninjas. As he focused intensely on his chakra exercise, Minato noticed a shadow approaching. Looking up, he saw Makoto Uchiha walking toward him, her expression serious but her eyes curious. She had a natural elegance and a presence that didn't go unnoticed, even among the other talented children. What set her apart was the depth in her gaze. She observed the world around her with an intensity that suggested an understanding beyond her age. You are brave, Minato Namikaze. Most here don't believe in you, but I like people who have bold ambitions, Makoto said, her voice calm and somewhat respectful, breaking the barrier of silence that had formed around them. Her recognition was not just words, there was a genuine weight behind them, as if she truly saw potential in the civilian boy before her. Tsuna, in turn, did not take well to Makoto's approach. What do you want, Uchiha? She asked, crossing her arms defensively. Her posture displayed a mix of irritation and challenge, a clear demonstration of her Senju pride. I'm talking to the boy, Senju, Makoto responded without hesitation, facing Tsuna's challenging gaze with an unflappable calm. He's my partner. Go take care of your own, Tsuna retorted, the rivalry between the Senju and Uchiha clans transpiring even in this childish interaction. He's my first friend, so it's okay to talk to him. Makoto replied, sitting down next to Minato with a naturalness that indicated she was not easily intimidated. Minato, sitting between the two, felt as if he were in the eye of a small hurricane. He knew the stories and rivalries between the Uchihas and the Senjus, legends and realities that intertwined in the foundation of Konoha. But seeing these tensions manifest in his classmates was a completely new experience. It was intriguing, confusing, and a bit intimidating. The civilian boy looked from Tsuna to Makoto, trying to understand the complicated dynamics unfolding before him. He knew that each of them, in their own way, was strong, determined, and carried the weight of their respective clans on their shoulders. And now, here they were, interacting with him, a boy without a clan, without the same legacy, but with dreams as big as theirs. Chapter 09, First Day in Ninja Academy 04. Third-person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. The discussion between Tsuna and Makoto had quickly escalated, both with inflamed pride and looks that cast sparks at each other. Minato, sitting between them, felt like a boat adrift between two colliding storms. Their voices rose, each word sharp as a kunai, until the attention of the entire room was turned to the trio. It was the voice of Professor Fuma, strong and unmistakable, that broke the tension. "Girls, can you stop this? Respect the class," he shouted, the veins in his forehead pulsing with the frustration of an educator trying to maintain order. Tsuna and Makoto immediately fell silent, but still glared at each other, the challenge clear in their eyes. Minato, feeling the weight of the silence that followed, tried to intervene. "Can you both calm down a bit? You're still drawing attention," he whispered, trying to appease the situation. However, his attempt was met with a simultaneous and severe shut up from both girls, leaving him stunned and a little more cautious about intervening in future disputes. As the teacher resumed the class, discussing details about chakra control techniques, Minato sank into his own thoughts. "My chakra control is still horrible, and I'm at a disadvantage compared to the other students who have been training even before the academy," he reflected, recalling the teacher's words about his surprising amount of chakra. "But I'm surprised I have more chakra than everyone here, except Tsuna. That's an advantage, but I hope not to have the same control difficulties as my future son." His mind, always working and planning, began to trace a path to follow. "I have to train chakra control, observation haki, and my Pika Pika no Mi. It's so much for me when I'm only 6 years old." The magnitude of his goals and the skills he needed to master seemed overwhelming, but Minato's determination did not waver, and he would master these techniques in due time. He thought further ahead, beyond the academy and to the larger events he knew were to come. "It's good to be prepared before the second ninja war breaks out. I might even save the Uzumaki, which should happen before the third ninja war. They will be valuable allies." He pondered the future, knowing that many of his plans would take years to materialize. But time was a resource he was willing to invest in intense training. "Anyway, I still have plenty of time to prepare, so I'll focus on the now and leave the future for later," Minato murmured to himself, trying to reorient himself after the torrent of thoughts and concerns about the future. "What are you mumbling there, Minato?" Tsuna asked, leaning closer with a curious expression. Beside him, Makoto also looked at him, her sharp eyes indicating a similar interest. Minato sighed internally, "Damn, forgot I'm between these two. My years in the academy can't be as quiet as I imagined before Kushina's arrival with these two by my side." He lamented silently. "It's nothing, Tsuna, I'm just thinking out loud," he tried to deflect, hoping the conversation wouldn't deviate into another clash between the two. "I see, just pay attention in class. We've been drawing a lot of attention from the teacher lately." "I don't want to draw any more attention from him," Tsuna grumbled, clearly worried about the image they were projecting to the teacher and the rest of the class. Makoto, however, didn't miss the opportunity to snipe. "TSK. The teacher calls you out because you're scandalous. The secret is not to get caught," she said, her tone laden with typical Uchiha arrogance. "What did you say, Uchiha?" Tsuna retorted, her voice increasing in volume and irritation. Minato rolled his eyes, foreseeing the start of another heated argument. "I'm saying you're too scandalous for a ninja," Makoto replied, keeping her voice expressionless, but her words were like fuel to the fire. "I'll show you that with my fists." Tsuna growled, clearly provoked beyond her limit. "Come at me, Senju. I'll show you the power of the Sharingan." Makoto challenged, even though her own Sharingan wasn't activated yet. "You haven't even unlocked your Sharingan yet, girl," Tsuna retorted, mocking Makoto's threat. Bang! The entire room trembled with the sound of a book slamming on Professor Fuma's desk. The noise echoed like thunder, immediately capturing everyone's attention. Minato, Tsuna, and Makoto, together in the last row, turned abruptly to face the source of the sound. The professor was staring at them with eyes sparkling with frustration. "You two, stop arguing again. You are disturbing the class. I swear next time I will put you both in detention." Fuma spoke, his tone serious and impatient, cutting through the air like a blade. The threat was clear, and for a moment, a heavy silence fell over the room. The other students, witnesses to this confrontation, looked toward the corner of the room with a variety of expressions. Some glances were tinged with envy, not just for the attention Minato received from Tsuna and Makoto but also for the beauty and promise the two kunoichis exhibited. Other students whispered among themselves, questioning how Minato, a mere civilian, managed to stand firm and even mediate between two such dominant forces from such renowned clans. "Why are they always together now?" a boy whispered, unable to divert his gaze from the intriguing trio. "He must be trying to use their connection to climb up the ranks," another boy speculated, his voice laden with poorly disguised jealousy. For Minato, Tsuna, and Makoto, however, these murmurs were little more than distant background noise. They were far more concerned with the immediate consequences of their actions. "Can you stop arguing all the time? It's the first day of class," Minato finally said, his voice firm and somewhat exasperated. He knew he needed to intervene before things escalated further. Tsuna turned her face away, clearly annoyed, but recognizing the seriousness of the situation. Tsuki Makoto, equally frustrated, looked the other way, the tension still evident in her expression. Minato could only sigh, feeling the weight of the day on his shoulders. He wished the class would end soon so he could escape from that battlefield. As the class proceeded, a tense silence prevailed in the last row where Minato, Tsuna, and Makoto were seated. The two girls, having been reprimanded by Professor Fuma, kept quiet, but the atmosphere around them was still charged. However, Minato felt the weight of the looks directed at him, an uncomfortable sensation he couldn't ignore. "Great, I'm drawing attention thanks to these girls," Minato grumbled to himself, feeling a mix of irritation and concern. He noticed different types of looks coming from his classmates. Some, like Shikaku Nara, looked at him with an expression that mixed pity and a desire for distance, as if proximity to the troublesome trio was a kind of contagion they wanted to avoid. Members of the Uchiha clan, on the other hand, cast looks laden with resentment and anger. Minato couldn't say for sure if their anger came from seeing him close to the chief's daughter or if it was because he, a civilian, had somehow surpassed or offended their pride. Either way, he knew these looks were not good. The class dragged on, with Professor Fuma continuing to lecture on the fundamentals of the village and chakra. Minato tried to focus on the class, but the sensation of stares upon him was a constant distraction. Tsuna was eyeing him, her gaze firm and resolved. He knew what that meant. She wanted to talk to him after the incident on the test day. As soon as the bell rang, signaling the end of the class, Minato, already anticipating Tsuna's imminent approach, acted quickly. With agility that surprised even some of the more experienced ninjas, he grabbed his things and leaped off the counter in a single fluid motion. "Wait, Minato!" Tsuna called, but he had no intention of stopping. His only focus was to get away from the blonde maniac and the uncomfortable situation he knew was approaching. With agile movements, he weaved through the other students, passing by them as if he were running on a well-practiced track. Upon reaching the corridor, he found himself surrounded by students from all classes, a sea of faces. But that didn't stop him, he used it to his advantage, quickly blending into the crowd and disappearing from sight. "Damn! He vanished!" Tsuna murmured frustratedly, sweeping the corridor with her gaze, but Minato was already far away, indistinguishable among the other students. Beside her, Makoto appeared, a mocking smile on her lips. "Seems like even men run away from you," she teased, enjoying the growing irritation of Tsuna. "Who's running from me? What do you think you're saying?" Tsuna retorted, veins popping on her forehead, her patience clearly running thin. "I'm saying you'll never find a man that way since they're already running from you." Makoto continued, her taunting sharp and direct. "You talk as if you're better than me, Blood Eye. No one wants a woman like you." Tsuna returned, her words laden with anger and challenge. The exchange between them was like a verbal battle, each word a strike aimed to wound. Meanwhile, far from the tension and irritated glances, Minato ran through the streets of Konoha, his breathing rhythmic and focused. He knew he had narrowly escaped and that the break would be brief. "It's time to train again," he said to himself, his voice full of determination. He skipped going to lunch at the orphanage to train, not wanting to waste any time. Chapter 10. First Year 01. Third Person POV. Training Camp, Konoha, Year 32. Minato finally arrived at the location he had chosen for his training in recent days, an isolated and quiet area, perfect for concentration and the development of his skills without anyone interfering. At least he didn't even notice an umbu in the area. With a wooden kunai in hand, he headed to the nearby river. This kunai, despite not being made of metal, was an instrument he had been practicing throws and maneuvers with, and its tip was still sharp enough to be effective in fishing. Arriving at the river, Minato assumed a focused and balanced posture. He patiently observed the water, looking for signs of movement. After several frustrated attempts, adjusting his technique with each mistake, he finally managed to catch a fish manually. It was a moment of modest triumph, but significant, demonstrating his growing skill and patience with the blade. With the fish in hand, Minato quickly prepared a small fire on the bank. He cleaned and roasted the fish with his experience from a past life, creating a simple but nutritious lunch. While eating, his thoughts were focused on the training ahead. I have the rest of the afternoon to train. I'll try to develop my haki and my ability with the fruit, he thought, referring to his ambitious goal of mastering skills that would make him formidable for the future. Finishing his lunch, Minato prepared for the next phase of his training. He placed a leaf on his forehead, a traditional chakra control training method that required him to keep the leaf attached to his forehead using only his chakra. To increase the difficulty and effectiveness of the training, he blindfolded himself. This would not only force him to rely on his other senses but was also preparation for his observation haki training. With his eyes blindfolded, Minato began to move through the forest, trying to dodge trees and natural obstacles as on the previous day. He knew this would be a challenging task, requiring full focus and deep attunement with his environment. At the same time, he tried to manifest his body of light, an ability of his fruit that, if mastered, would allow him to avoid damage and move at incredible speeds. It was a challenging and exhausting 3-in-1 training, but Minato was determined. With every step Minato took, every collision with the trees and natural obstacles of the forest, he absorbed a lesson. The sounds of the forest became a sonic map, each bird singing, each branch cracking under his feet, provided information about his surroundings. The smell of damp earth, the aroma of leaves and wood, all filled his senses, keeping him grounded in the present moment. The wind caressed his skin, a gentle caress that brought with it the direction and speed of potential obstacles. He used these natural clues to orient himself in his blind run. Ouch! He couldn't help but groan as he hit his forehead on a tree, but he quickly got up and continued his training. Once again he hit another tree, his leaf was placed back on his forehead. Even without hitting, he could still feel the leaf struggling to remain on the skin. Each time the leaf threatened to fall, he adjusted his focus, channeling a precise amount of chakra to keep it attached. It was a delicate balance between keeping divided attention and yet being fully focused on each aspect of his training. Above all, Minato sought that deep and intuitive feeling, the premonition that preceded danger, the key to his observation haki. He knew that this ability was more than just a heightened sense, it was an almost supernatural perception of the world around him. Each time he hit a tree or stumbled, he came a little closer to activating this latent ability, learning to feel the world in a way his blindfolded eyes could not see. Even if it was a skill that would take up to a year to awaken, he would still continue. This intensive training was not just physical, it was a test of his will, patience, and perseverance. Each bruise, each scratch, were marks of his progress, symbols of his unwavering determination. He knew that the path to becoming the ninja he aspired to be was fraught with challenges, but each step, each fall, each success, brought him closer to his goal. After 3 hours immersed in this rigorous regime, his body was covered in bruises and scratches. Recognizing the need to shift focus, Minato decided to continue his training with kunais. Despite the fatigue, he knew he needed to hone his throwing skills and precision. Picking up his wooden kunais, he began to practice his throws, aiming at specific targets he had marked on the trees. With each throw, he adjusted his aim, his strength, and his chakra control, refining his technique with each kunai he threw. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the forest, Minato continued, tireless in his quest to achieve the extraordinary and refine his skills. Minato returned to the orphanage in the late afternoon, walking through the village streets in a visibly worn state, similar to the last time he had undergone similar training. His clothes were dirty and crumpled, and small cuts and bruises adorned his skin like the last time. Despite this, there was a glow of determination in his eyes, a clear sign that he did not regret the effort expended. As he walked through the streets of Konoha, and people wondered if the boy had been attacked again. Madame Garit, the person in charge of the orphanage, was waiting for him as expected, as if she already knew about Minato's training escapades. With her arms crossed and a reproachful but concerned look, she watched him approach. "So you were training again? I hope you've eaten," she said. Her tone was stern, but there was a hint of affection in her words. "I was training, yes, I need to get stronger," Minato replied, his voice carrying a tone of apology. He knew that Madame Garit was concerned about his health and well-being, but he also understood that his training was essential for his future goals. "As long as you are well-fed, it's fine. It looks like tomorrow you will start full-time classes, so I doubt you can do these trainings again," she commented, a gentle reminder that Minato's life would soon become more complicated with the increase in school responsibilities. Minato nodded. He knew that his days of free training were about to become rarer, and he would need to adjust his routine to balance school and personal development. Ignoring the other boys who were excitedly talking about their own training in the first day of school, Minato headed directly to his space. He was physically and mentally exhausted, and he knew that the only thing that could really help him now was a good rest. Lying in his modest bed, Minato closed his eyes. The next day, with the sun still shy in the sky, Minato walked towards the academy for another day of classes. Upon arriving at the entrance, he met Suna, waiting for him with her arms crossed and an expression that left no doubt she had something to say. "Hello, Suna," Minato greeted, trying to keep the tone light. "Did you run away from me yesterday?" She interrogated him, an eyebrow arched in suspicion. "I don't know what you're talking about, I just went to train," he replied, maintaining a small smile, trying to steer away from the subject. "Minato, if I find out you're running away from me, I'll catch you. I won't allow that girl to mock me if boys are running away from me," Suna said, frustration coloring her words, and the pout on her face revealed more than she would have liked. "What did you say?" Minato raised an eyebrow, surprised by her admission without understanding what she meant by that. "It's nothing. Now let's go to class, we can't be late, can we?" She quickly changed the subject, grabbing him by the arm resolutely. "Wait, I know how to go to class by myself," he protested, but received only an intense look from the girl, who clearly was not willing to let him escape again. With little room to argue, he let himself be led by her to the classroom. As they walked, Minato couldn't help but think about the dynamic unfolding. "This year is going to be quite intense," he murmured to himself, half resigned, half amused by the situation. The blonde Senju by his side was a force to be reckoned with, and he knew that his interactions with her and the other students would bring challenges and, possibly, unexpected opportunities. The path ahead was uncertain, but Minato was ready to face whatever came, inside and outside the classroom. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.